And I'm also joined by Ben, my colleague and co-host, so he's going to be in the background just in case he needs to jump in at any point, or if anything goes wrong and I disappear, keep you entertained while I come back. But as we're just saying, this session is all around those next steps in Excel, so the advanced Excel. So in the last session, if you weren't on it, we went through just Excel in general, went through some of those basic aspects of Microsoft Excel. Now, if you do want to go over that again, if you're not too confident on Excel, that's absolutely fine. We do have a free learning resource called Digital Wings, which you can all have access to. We've got loads of information on there. It's packed full of articles, modules, modular learning, which you can do in your own time. We've got a whole section on there all around Microsoft Office skills, including everything I covered off on the last session. So if you do want to access that, you just need to go to the Digital Wings website. So you can just type into Google Digital Wings. It will come up with this website here. And all you need to do is just click sign up. It's a really simple process. We don't ask for loads of information. It's literally your name, your email address, and a password, what you'd need to log in to any website. And then this is just the important bit. And again, I would post this in the chat, but if Nada, if you can post this in the chat for me, that would be fantastic. In the company code box, you need to put 4 characters, and those characters are SDRT. So 4 characters, SDRT, and then you have access to a tailored learning pathway that we've built for you. And in there, once you've signed up and you go to our digital courses, you'll be able to see the Microsoft Office learning in there. If you want to go over the Excel from before, and there's more on Excel in there as well, you just need to go to there and you'll have full access to that. You can share that with anybody, say it's a free resource, and we love to hear how it's served you. So today's session, as I say, more advanced. The content I will go through isn't on Wings, and that's because I put this together. It's entirely tailored, very bespoke for you, and it's going to be split into 2 parts. So the first part of the session, I'm just going to take you through time savers. So I will literally just have an Excel document open. I'm just going to show you some time savers with some pieces of data, which can help you in managing data instead of having to sit all day typing things out. Excel can do a lot of that for you. And the second part will be just introducing Power Queries and pivot tables to you. Again, a very useful tool in analyzing large amounts of data in a very short period of time. And at the end, if there's any questions, please do feel free to ask those. As I say, we've got both Ben and I here today. We should be able to help you with any questions Excel related on there. We'll try our best to anyway. So I think we should jump straight into it, as there's a lot to cover off today. So to begin with, as I say, we're going to look at just managing data, just some time savers. So I'm going to pull up an Excel document. I've got some pieces of information in here so far. Just make sure that is sharing, that is. So this is just data. Data is just information you have inside your cells on Excel. In here, I've just put some months, years, some times, and I've got a bunch of names on here. I'm just going to show you some time savers, how we can manage that. We're going to start off quite simple and progressively get more complex as we go through. So probably most definitely will be things you already know. That's absolutely fine. But hopefully there will be things that you don't know, or I can re-show you that you already used to know, and then you'll learn how to do it again. So Excel recognizes data. It knows what it is. For instance, I have a month here, I've got January typed in. I could just start typing February, March, April, May, June, July, etc. And that'll take me a few minutes, or I can get Excel to do that for me in a few seconds. For instance, I can just click on January. This small square in the bottom right hand corner of the cell, if I just click on that, you can see this black cross appears. And if I drag that across, it will then input the rest of the months for me in order, because Excel has recognized that. It will also do the same if you go down as well. So I've got October here, I can drag it down. Again, it will do the same, depends how you want that formatted on the document. It does the same thing for dates as well. So you can see I've got a date here. This one's just the 25th of April, 2022. Must be when we first wrote this in. I have this document saved. If I drag that across, it will then input all the next pieces of information. So it follows through to the next date. so on and so forth. Same with time. So we've got 9 o'clock. If I drag that across, you'll then input the next times. And then same with days. So you don't have to sit there a lot of the time typing in that information. As I say, Excel recognizes what it is. If you simply just select it, click that bottom right corner and drag, it will input the rest of the data for you. Now, you may have a document that you want to follow a set time range. So for instance, maybe you have a document that follows the past 7 days always, and every day you update that and it always follows that 7-day period. Now, you could go onto a new Excel document every single day, retype the next day, keep typing the next day and updating all of those dates. Or you can have Excel do that for you. Well, it'll automatically update the dates for you to fall in line with a set time period. So in this case, the last 7 days. I'll show you what I mean by that. So I can do a simple formula. For instance, it is equals. So formulas in Excel, you will usually begin with an equal sign. And in this one, I'm just going to type today because I want it to display today's date. As you can see, it says returns the current date formatted as a date. Now you do need to specify, so I will just open and close some brackets because I'm not going to put any more information in there. Just want it to show today's date. So equals today, open brackets, close brackets. Very simple formula. And then I press enter and it will always display today's date. So if I open this tomorrow, it will display the 21st of the 6th, 2023. And I won't need to go in tomorrow and type a new date in there. Now I could do this for, as I say, a 7-day period always. So let's say we always want to look at the last 7 days. So I could then start typing this formula a few times. So let's just do today. Again, we'll do equals today, open brackets, close brackets, -1. So that'll return yesterday's date. Again, I could just do equals today, open brackets, close brackets, -2, and that'll display 2 days ago. And I can do so on for the past week. And now, as I say, every time I open this document on a different day, next week, next month, it will always display the dates for the last 7 days. And it's a really great way, as I say, to have a live document where you just need to go in and update some figures without having to keep changing those dates every day. And as you can do that for any range period, so I could do 1,000 days ago, so I could put equals today, open brackets, close brackets, 1,000. Sorry, I'll do -1,000 because we're looking back, get all these warning signs because I typed in, no, okay, yeah, I typed that in wrong. We'll do -1,000 and it will display the date from 1,000 days ago. So again, you put any date range in there, it will always display that for you. And I know this has been a really great tool for people who have managed data. And as I say, they want a live document, which is always looking at a set time period, or even a document which is always listed for today's date. Now, something else that I want to show you, just using the data that I've already put in place here, is that say you have, I don't know, a database, you've put the data in, you've got loads of it, but you want that formatted in a different way. You don't want the data running across the screen. You're now here to organize that data to make it look a certain way. So I want this data to appear vertically down my screen, not horizontally across. I could sit here and I could just start typing this all out again. So I could do January, drag that down, type the days, drag that down, or even if it wasn't days, times and months, and Excel didn't recognize it, I would have to manually type out all that information step by step so it appears down my screen. Or I could get Excel to just automatically turn this data from running horizontally across my screen to vertically in a couple of clicks. So to do that, you just highlight the data that you want this to happen to. So for instance, I'm just going to highlight this information here. I'm just going to copy that. So I'm just going to Control-C, or you can right-click copy. You know in Excel something has been copied because this green dotted line will appear around the data. Then you need to select where you want that to be pasted into. So I'm just going to choose a blank area on my screen. Let's just go with this cell here. I'm going to paste that data in there. So it is just a simple copy and paste. Now, If you do just go right click and then paste it, the issue is it will just paste it again horizontally. We do want to turn it vertically. So there are a series of paste options that you have. The one we want to use is the one called transpose. So what are we doing? We're turning the text from horizontal to vertical. As you can see right here, there is an option which has 2 arrows which actually demonstrate that. So if we just click on that, I say it is called transpose, it now runs my data vertically down the screen. And it looks a lot neater, as you can see. And then we can just apply our own formatting to that. So again, maybe I have data appearing vertically and I want to make it horizontal. Same thing, just need to copy the data, select a space I want to paste it into. I can right click or I can go to the paste options. And again, I'll select that transpose option and then it runs it across my screen. And I've used this myself to shift very large amounts of data, thousands of lines of text instantly into a new format on my screen, which again, huge time saver, could save you potentially an entire day having to retype everything out again. Now, another thing that we can do in Excel is we can use drop-down menus, so like a list. So for instance, if we had a survey, we may want to give someone the option to choose a set of answers. We can send that document on and people can then put answers in there using a drop-down menu. So an example of that is I could type in, say for instance, what year were you born, or what blood group are you, or what this, that, and the other, what's your favorite day of the week, whatever it might be. So great, I've posed a question there. Fantastic. Now, one thing we could do is we could just start typing years out, and it's gone for a substantially long time. So for instance, let's just start like this. Let's go 1900, 1901. Let's start dragging these dates down. Let's go all the way to today. And I could make a document like this. For instance, let's go to today's date. I know it's probably very unlikely someone was born in 1900, and it's very unlikely someone who is born this year will be answering this survey, but we'll just go with it. So I could do that, and I could have this survey, and this is just one question. Someone could scroll all the way down and then just simply put a tick in the box on the year they're born. And that takes up a substantial amount of space on our document just for one question, when I can put all of those dates into one box. So for instance, I'll show you how I do that. I've got all my dates here. We could do a drop-down menu instead. So we've got what year were you born? Let's just make that a question, just do a question mark in there. To do this, I'm just going to select the cell I want the drop-down menus to appear in. What I then want to do is go to the tab titled Data. So that's at the top of my screen. Now, from here, we need to select an option called Data Validation. So if we go to our data tools, you might see it immediately. Mine might be set up slightly differently. So I'm just going to click this drop down just to give me some more options. And there's one called Data Validation. So in Data and Data Tools, I'll click Data Validation. And then from here, I'm going to do a list. I'm then going to specify the list. So in this case, quite extreme. I do have quite a substantial amount of dates. So if I just drag all of those, just copy out over all of those, I now have a drop-down option. And if I click on there, you can see I have all of my dates. And from using up 123 different cells here, I've now condensed that all into one cell. And someone can just go through and they can just select the year they were born, and then it will show in there. Again, you can do the same thing you can do that for anything. You don't have to have the data showing on the screen like this. So for instance, I'll give you an example. I may say, let's do a simple one, is your favorite day of the week. Let's say I don't have that list on my screen. Again, I'll just go to Data Tools, Data Validation. Let's choose a list again. And this time I can just type the dates out. So I could just do Monday, comma, space, Tuesday, comma, space, Wednesday, and so on. I'm not going to type it all out. Press OK, and then they display the days like that as well. So it's just a nice way to clear up data, not have hundreds of lines of text showing if you've just got a survey. You can put it onto a nice, simple document with these drop-down menus. And again, just a really quick recap. You find that in data, and it's in the data tools, and it's data validation. And you need to select list, and then you just need to specify what you want in that list, either by copying over the data or typing in what you want to appear on that list, like I've just done there.
Sam?
Yep.
Can I just ask, is it comma separation when if you're typing it in, or was it a colon? I didn't quite see.
Yeah. So if I go back, I'll just show you. So if I go data validation, as you can see, I had I just did a comma, and then a space, and then type, and then it will just separate it nicely for you.
Thank you.
No problem at all. So another example of a huge time saver in Excel is that you might be presented with some data that you want to separate into different columns. So there might be a string of text. In this case, I've gone with a really simple example. I've just used a first name and a surname, although they are the same names, just repeated several times. But it could be anything, and you may want the data separated into different columns. Maybe you've got month and year in the same column, and you want the months to appear in one column and you want the years to appear in another, just so you can format it nicely. If you want to add some calculations in there, some formulas, it would all work nice and smoothly. In this case, I will separate the names. So to do this, you can see I've got all these names. I'm going to separate first names and surnames into different columns from each other. Now, this is really simple to do. I'm just going to highlight all the names. You might have an entire column you want to separate. In that case, you can just click on the actual column itself. So this would be A, and it just highlights everything. But for this one, I don't want to separate this data up here. So I'm just going to highlight my names. And then again, we're managing data. So we would go to that data tab again. And this is really simple. Again, in your data tools, there is an option that says text to columns, because we are separating text into different columns. So if I select that, it then asks me how I want it to separate the text. So in this one, I'm going to do it by a delimiter. So it will specify by characters, and I'll show you what I mean in a moment. So I'll choose delimited. I'm going to press next, and then I can specify how I want this text to separate. So in this case, you can see there is a space between all the names. So I'm just going to say wherever a space occurs, I want it to separate the data. And it gives you a preview down below. So this, as you can see, we've got the first names and the surnames that are now separated in two separate columns. Maybe you have the data, but it's all separated by commas. In that case, you would select comma, and then it would look for everywhere a comma has occurred, and it will separate the text. But in this case, they are just spaces. So we'll go with space. And then I'm just going to go next. Again, it gives you a few more options. I'm okay where we are at now. So I'm just going to finish that. And it's separated my text into two separate columns. Again, you may have thousands of lines of text, and just from using data and text columns, you can save yourself hours in just a few seconds by separating that text. You may also be presented with the opposite scenario, where you need to actually put the text together in one column. Maybe I have, again, for first names and surnames, but I want them to appear in one column, not two separate columns. We can do that with a formula called concatenate. Now, I will showcase several formulas today. I don't expect you to remember all of them off by heart. That's absolutely fine. It's more to demonstrate the capabilities of Excel. And a really useful tip is there is an option, a tab titled Formulas on Excel. And in here, it will give you all the knowledge, the skills to use different formulas. It will tell you what they mean. So for instance, we've got text formulas, we've got mathematical formulas, we've got date and time formulas, and you can choose these and it shows you what they all are. And if you hover over them, it will tell you what each formula actually means. And you can even go tell me more and it will give you more information. And I learnt formulas by going that way, by just looking for different things which I could potentially do, trying to find the formula, hovering over them, and then actually reading up on what those formulas do. And over time, I got used to those formulas. Now, to put strings of text together, we use a formula called concatenate. It is actually found in that text column, as you saw. It's right here, as you can see. And it says it concatenates a list or range of text strings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type equals, and we're going to start typing concatenate. If I just type in con, you can see it gives us the options. Here it is, this one here. And it says joins several text strings into one text string. So that means I can bring text from multiple different columns all into one column. So let's choose that one. And then it guides you through how to build that formula. So it asks me, what is the first piece of text I want to appear in my column? Well, I want the first name to appear. So I'm just going to click on that one. It then tells me to put a comma. It tells me then to put a space. And then it asks for the next piece of text I want to bring into that column, which is the surname. So I'll just click on that. And that's all I want to bring together. Now you can bring more and more and more. Depends how many columns you want to bring into that one area. I just want to bring those two together. So I'll just close my brackets to finish the formula. And then I'll press enter and it joins them together. And then using that same functionality I showed before with the dates, times, and months, we can just click that bottom right-hand corner, drag it down, and it will apply that same formula across all of those different rows, like so, and it'll bring everything together. So we don't need to keep typing out that formula. We can do it just the one time, drag it down, and it'll apply it to everything else. Now, there is one glaringly obvious problem here, and that's that all of the names are now joined together with no space. And that's fine, perfectly simple to amend that. And I will quickly show you how to do that. So let's just get rid of the ones we had. Let's keep that original formula. If you want a space to appear in your formula, you need to specify a space. So if I click on that first name, you can see in our formula bar, we have our formula that we just typed out. So we want a space to appear between these two text strings. So after the first text string, which was A14, just after that comma, I'm just going to click there. And I'm just going to specify a space. So to do that, I'll do some speech marks. And then I simply just hit the space bar once and then close those speech marks and then add a comma. And the speech marks with a space and then another speech marks, that is showing that there is a space there that I want to appear. I'll just close it off with another comma. That's all I need to do. So I've just specified a space in there. And then if I hit enter, in our space is the text for me. And now it should apply that same formula to everything by clicking and dragging. And again, imagine you have thousands of lines of text and you want to apply that to everything. Yes, it might take 10, 15 minutes to learn which equation you want to put there. Which formula you want to put there, what it means. But that 10 and 15 minutes of trying to figure out that formula is definitely going to be a lot quicker than spending hours typing out all of the information, again, potentially days. So that's how useful those formulas can come in. So to take this a step further, there are a couple more formulas that we can use to really manage our data. So I actually have a data set. So if I just go to my next sheet, I've got all this data here. And we're going to apply a couple of formulas to just, again, showcase how we can save a huge amount of time analyzing this information. So first, I've brought the data into Excel. I need to clean this up a bit just to make sure that it works. Now, sometimes if you have spaces appearing before text, formulas, they won't work properly. So I need to remove these spaces. I can see here next to Facebook, this space is occurring. And if I scroll down, I know for a fact I have about 2,000 lines of text here. Now I don't want to scroll through 2,000 lines of text trying to find all those spaces and removing them when I can just get it to do that for me with a very simple equation. We just want to trim those spaces out. So to do that, I'm just going to choose a blank cell on my document. So let's just go for this one here. And I'm just going to type equals again, because starting that formula off. And as I said before, I want to trim those spaces out. So I'm going to use a formula called trim. And if you just hover over trim, you can see it says removes all spaces from a text string, except for single spaces between words. So it's not going to get rid of the spaces between words. So that's great. It's only going to remove spaces if it appears before my text, which is exactly what I want this to do. I wanted to get rid of those spaces. So let's go with trim. We'll open those brackets. Now, I say there's about 2,000 lines of text. I could sit here and click and drag all the way down, or I can just get it to select the entire column. So I'm just going to click A, and it will highlight everything for me. And then I'm just going to close the bracket. And it's that simple. So equals trim, choose A, and then close bracket. And if I press enter, and we'll just do this, make sure this works a moment. Okay, so spill, it hasn't worked, that one, for whatever reason. Now, if it hasn't worked, it says spill range isn't blank. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of that, and I'm going to retype it out again, like so. We're going to trim this again, and we're going to do, let's say, let's just try again. It might not work. No, there we are. Worked a moment ago. Right before I piloted this, it literally was working for me. So again, what you could do is you can do the old click and drag over all your text, like so. Now, fortunately for me, I know in this instance, there are only 2 spaces appearing in this whole text. They're actually on that first part. So I can just quickly choose that and close bracket. But my formula, for whatever reason, isn't working now. I say it did work right before I started this session. So I'm not sure why that isn't working. Ben, I don't know if there's anything you can see that I may have done wrong there for the trim formula.
No, it's absolutely spot on in all the right places. Just because we're digital equals doesn't mean tech always does behave for us as well. And we love to showcase that things can misbehave. But no, that should be working because you've done it in the blank one on there. There'd be no reason why.
Okay, so yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close that, reopen my data set, because as I say, I was testing this before because I've had an issue running this session in the past with a different partner where, again, there were a couple of formulas which were not working, even though they were working right before. So if I just go back here, let's open up this new document, which might take a second. And that way I'll just reset everything. Because the trim formula, if you select column, it should just take those spaces out. As I say, probably trialed it 2 or 3 times right before I got on this call just to make sure it was all working smoothly. And for whatever reason, it's now not working smoothly. So let's just do trim, do my column because it's asking for the text. So I'm just doing my text and we'll just hit, there we are. So you see exactly the same formula, but this time it's worked for me. Okay, perfect. I'm glad that worked. So as you saw, I did the exact same formula. So equals trim, open brackets. I selected the whole column, close the bracket. And then what it's done is it's put all of the data in here, all 2,000 lines of text, and it's removed any spaces it's found. And then all I want to do is I just want to paste this on top of that column. So I'm just going to select column G. I'm going to copy it. So it's just going to copy everything there. And then I'm just going to go to column A. And I'm just going to paste this, but I'm not going to do a standard paste because it will show me a load of error codes. Instead, I want to paste the values because I know there are a couple of, there is a data validation applied in there and I don't want that to break. So I'm just going to choose the paste option with the numbers 1, 2, and 3. And I'll paste that in there and it will just paste that new information on top, removes all those spaces. And then all I need to do is clear this one here, like so. So again, just a really quick recap, equals trim, open brackets, shows the whole column, close brackets, trimmed out any of those spaces, and I've simply copied that and then I've pasted it as a value on top of column A. Now that just ensures that no spaces appear before my text and my formulas, which I'm going to apply in a minute, will work. Well, hopefully, as we saw a minute ago, for whatever reason, I was getting an error. So hopefully the next formulas do work. So I've cleared up my data nicely. It's looking good. I can now apply some of these formulas in place to analyze this data. So over at the right-hand side of the page, you can see I've got some information here. So this is just basically replicating Digital Wings. We've got lots of different modules on there, like the Facebook module, the Twitter module, the Instagram, so on. And all of these are actually modules that appear on Digital Wings. We then have the badge ID that goes with that. And then how many times each of these modules has been completed by a person who has gone on to our website. Now, what I can do first is I want to locate the badge ID for each of my modules. So I could say Facebook, okay, let's look for your badge ID. There's a column here called badge ID. I'm just going to look for the number that appears next to Facebook. So here's Facebook and here's the number. And I could go here and I could type in this number, which shows under badge ID. So that's 154. And then we've got 132. And then I can do the same with Twitter. So we just need to look for Twitter. There it is. Go to badge ID. Now you can see how long that's going to take. And there are some modules all the way down here, which will literally be like looking for a needle in a haystack. And if I've got a large list of modules here, that's going to take me, again, potentially all day to type out those badge IDs when I can just use a formula to look that up for me. So this formula is called VLOOKUP. So we'll do equals VLOOKUP. And what it says is it looks for a value in the leftmost column of a table. So we're going to find the value that goes with the name or the word Facebook. So in this case, it is the value for this one is, as I was saying, the value is badge ID. So we need to choose to find a badge ID. And then again, because we're using one formula, we can apply that to all of our modules. So what may take 5 to 10 minutes trying to figure out how a formula works is going to save you hours in the long run. So let's start that formula. So we'll do VLOOKUP. We'll then do open bracket. Now I want it to look for the word Facebook. So I'm just going to simply click on it. You can even just type it in by using those speech marks, type in Facebook, closing them. But I'm just going to say we want to look for Facebook. Where do I want that to look for? Well, I want it to, so I'm just going to do a comma. I'm going to choose my whole table. So it's just going to look for wherever that word appears in everything. So I've just clicked A, dragged it along to E. So that's highlighted everything for me. Just going to do another comma. And I want it to look for the badge ID. Now, badge ID is column 4, as you can see. A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4. So badge ID is column 4. So I'm just going to type in 4. And then if I do a comment, it gives an interesting, there's another bit here. I either want to type in true or false. If I type true, it will give me an approximate match. If I type false, it will give me an exact match. Now, I obviously want an exact match in this case. So I will type the word false in here. And then I just need to close my brackets. Again, don't expect you to remember this. It's just to show you what that VLOOKUP does. And I press enter. And as you can see, it's immediately found the badge ID for Facebook. It's looked up that badge ID and it's given me the value. Now, I've typed out the formula. I can now click that bottom right and drag it, and it will apply that to everything. So it's given me the value from Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and WhatsApp modules, all in a second of me clicking and dragging. And you can see if I had multiple lines of information there, or multiple modules, it would have done that all for me in a few seconds, rather than me having to look through and then manually type each of those out. VLOOKUP does that for me. Now, what if I want Excel to then tell me how many times each module is being completed? Well, the way that I can find that out is it's how many times the word appears. So, for instance, if I want to know how many times the Facebook module has been completed, I need to look for how many times the word Facebook appears in column A. So I could sit here, I could say, okay, we've got 1 there. We got another one here, so 2. And again, there's 2,000 lines of text here, so I can just go through, and it's like, look, again, as I said before, looking for a needle in a haystack. That's going to take me all day. You then have the element of human error, where I could miss certain points, and then the data is inaccurate. And I want it to give me an exact number rather than me having to go through and count every time that word appears for 2,000 different lines. So to do that, I'm going to use a formula where Excel will count the word Facebook for me in that column. So we'll do equals. Now I want it to count the data, so I'm going to start typing count. And there is a formula called count if. So if I select that, it says counts the number of cells within a range that meet the given condition. Now the given condition in this case is how many times the word Facebook appears in a range that I will specify. So let's do that one. What range do I want to check? Well, I want to check the whole of column A, because that's where I know where all those words appear. We're going to do a comma, and then I want it to look for the word Facebook in that column. So again, I'm just going to click on Facebook there, close the brackets and press enter. And it immediately tells me how many times that word appears. And the great thing about this is I can then again go to the bottom right-hand corner, click and drag, and it applies that formula to everything. And it's a huge time save. As I said, what could have taken me hours and hours and hours with an element of human error, I have just done with one formula that is called count if. And again, if you're not used to formulas and it takes you 10, 15, 20 minutes, even half an hour trying to figure out how to do that formula, you're going to save a lot more time doing it than you are trying to search for each of those words. And now that I've put those formulas in place, I can just start typing in new pieces of information. So maybe I want it to look for the badge ID and the number of completion of the module called data privacy. So I'll type in data privacy. I'll click away, and it immediately gives me the badge ID and the number of completions. Again, we'll look for another module here. So there's one called digital detox. So let's do digital. Make sure I type it correct, otherwise it won't give me anything. We'll do digital detox. And again, it tells me the badge ID and the number of completions. Let's just go for one more. Let's do YouTube badge. And there you are. It tells me the badge ID and again, the number completed. Because I've done that formula the one time, it will now apply it to everything else for me. So again, I don't expect you to remember those formulas off by heart because some of them can be quite complex. There is a lot to them. It's to show you the capability of those formulas. And from learning those formulas and just going through them, spending that bit of extra time on them can potentially save you hours in the long term, filling in all that information. Now, we can then, at the end of this, insert a chart. So we've got our information here. Maybe I want to showcase this in a chart. So I want to show how many times each of these modules have been completed. I can then just select this information here, go to insert, and I can get Excel to recommend me a chart. We've got a recommended chart here, so let's just go with that one. This doesn't really make any sense because it's showing the badge ID, so I can just filter that out by using this filter option. So if I just hover over this, let's get rid of the badge ID. And let's just show how many times each module has been completed. So we'll click apply. Oh, I'm clicking too fast there. So let's go badge ID, apply that. And there we are. We've got a nice chart which just showcases that data I've just put here. So it shows me all my modules and it shows me how many times each module has been completed. Again, it's just another way that we can analyze that data. Now, I am conscious of time, and there is another tool that I do want to show you really quickly, and that's called Power Queries. A lot of people don't realize that Power Queries is something that actually exists. And what it does is it helps you organize and clear up data very quickly. So instead of everything I've just done there with all those different formulas and that, you can do that in Power Queries. So I'll show you what I mean by that. I won't go into too much depth because I could literally be here all day. It's just to show you that Power Queries is a thing and that it exists. So I'm just going to open a new Excel document really quickly to showcase this. So just a blank document. And as I say, Power Queries, what they do is it gets your data and it clears it up. And normally, if we need to analyze data, we need to first get hold of our data from some database. We then need to copy it and paste it into Microsoft Excel. Then we got to clear it up. Maybe we want to remove some columns, add some columns, run some calculations. And once we've done all of that, spent all those hours, we can finally analyze that data. And I said it can take hours and hours and hours to do that before we even get to the point of actually analyzing the data. So that's where Power Queries come in, and it will let you do all that work. So it'll do all that work for you, and it'll automate the whole process. Sounds great. And it really is great. As I said, it is quite complicated. There is a lot to it when you're first looking at it, but I'm going to try and lay it out as simply as I can. I'm not going to show you everything. I'm going to show you the simple features of Power Queries. So I've opened a blank Excel document. I need to get my data first. So if I go to that data tab, Excel allows you to get data from multiple different sources. So first, I've got this option in the very far left-hand corner called Get Data. You can get your data from lots of different files. So maybe it's a file saved to your computer in a folder. You can even now import data from a PDF document, which is really good. So I know myself, I've been sent PDF documents with data, and I've saved it, and then I've been able to just import that straight from the PDF, and it puts it into Excel for me, which has been really good. You can do it from different databases as well, but just to keep things simple, I've saved a document. I'm going to bring it in from my documents. So I'm just going to choose my documents. So we'll just click on that. We'll wait for my files to open a second. So it might take a moment. There we are. And if I just go up here, I have saved it in Upskills, and I have a data set. So I'm going to import this. I'm going to click import. And again, it might take a few seconds just to load up the page. So it's just connecting for me. I'll give it a second. So first we get the data. Okay, so I've got my data set, and I can click on my data set, and there's the data. So this is what my file that I had saved is looking like. You can import multiple different data sets at once, or different pieces of data, so databases. You can do multiple at once and bring them all into one place. Again, I'm going to keep this very simple, just going to do one. I can just load that, and it will just load up the data immediately into Excel. But I don't want to do that. I actually want to use Power Queries to transform my data ready for me to analyze. So there's an option that says transform data. So choose your database and then click transform. And this will open up our Power Queries editor. And again, I'll give it a few seconds. So this is the Power Query editor. Let's just get rid of that. It's an old document. As I say, I saved it. First saved this 152 days ago, as it says. Another great thing about Power Queries is you can refresh the data. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Now, this is the editor. Just a really quick tour. At the top of the screen, we've got our different options, our toolbar, just the same as Excel. So you've got all your options up here, and they are put into different tabs as well with more options. Over at the side of the screen, the left-hand side, those are our queries. So as I said, I've only opened one database. You're only going to see one in there, and that is our data set that we have just opened. So I will close that. There's not really much we need to look at there. And then finally, the right-hand side of the screen, we have our query settings and our applied steps. So throughout this will show you every step you do. So every time you make an edit, it will add the step in here. And say you don't like that edit or you want to change it, you can just simply click on the cross next to the edit, and it will reverse the step for you. And again, I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So here's all our data. We've got all our columns and rows like you have in Excel. Let's start transforming this, make it look how I want it to look. So firstly, let's get rid of any unnecessary columns. There's a column here with just a load of null values. So it's a pointless column for what I want to do. I'm going to get rid of that. So I'm just going to click on the column, and I'm going to click remove columns. Now you can also right click remove, or you can do the toolbar at the top of the screen. So let's remove that column. And the column has now deleted, so that's gone. And again, instead of actually being in Excel, copying the whole thing and then deleting it, I can just click on it and click remove in Power Queries. Now, I've applied that step, and in applied steps, you can see the option for remove columns has now appeared because that was the last step I did. Say I didn't want to get rid of that column, I can just click on that cross and it will reverse the step for me and my column is back. But let's get rid of that one. I don't want that one for now. Now, the next one, you can see we've got a date and time in here. So I showed you before how to separate two pieces of information into two different columns. We can do the same thing in Power Queries. So again, let's split these two into different columns. So I'll just choose this one. And I'm going to go to the option that says split column. And we're going to do it in the same way we did before with our data. We'll do it by a delimiter. So we'll click by delimiter. And it will just take a moment to load. And how do we want that split? Well, I'm just going to say wherever a space appears like I did before. So let's just get rid of that there and let's just hit the space bar once. Now, you will notice if you don't type anything, it will show you there is an error. So if I click on that, it'll tell me, please enter a value. If you ever do any formulas or anything like that in Power Queries and it's wrong, it will show you this warning sign and it will tell you what is wrong with it. So let's just do a space. And that's all I want to do in there. I just want the columns to split by spaces. And that's all I need to do. Just hit the space bar once and then press OK. It will now look for the space that appears between the text strings and it separated it into two different columns for me. Now, it actually appears on further investigation, I don't actually want either of these columns. They, again, completely irrelevant to me. This one's just got the 31st of December, 1899. I don't need that on my data. So again, I'm just going to remove that column and I don't need these times as well. So I'm just going to remove those as well. Just clears up that data a bit, gets rid of any unnecessary information. So that's now put us down to 5 columns, looking nice and neat, a lot easier on the eye. You can move columns around as well. So again, in Excel, if we wanted to do that, we'd have to copy a whole column, copy it, paste it in another location, drag the other columns out of the way, and it can take a while. It can mess things up. And in Power Queries, I can simply select a column and just drag it into the location I want it. Like so, I can put dates there. I can put badge IDs here. I can keep company IDs there and I can keep modules there. So I've moved around my data. Now, I might save this and come back to this another time. And maybe I'll come back to this in a week. And now the data in my spreadsheet is outdated. As you saw, I had that warning a moment ago saying it could be outdated. In that case, I can just refresh the data, click it. And if you've pulled that data from an external database, if you refresh it, it should then refresh the data to make it up to date for you. So you don't have to, you're not working off old information by clicking on that refresh button. I don't need to do that because I've just opened it and I know that data hasn't changed. So keeping it really simple, I won't do much more to my data, just to show you there are so many options you can do in here. You can do formulas, you can add new rows, loads and loads you can do in here. But I'm just keeping it very simple, just moving a few things around, deleting a few columns, splitting some columns, and then just showing you that we have our applied steps. Now I want this to appear in Excel. So I just simply need to click close and load in the top left-hand corner, and it will now load that data straight into Excel exactly as I have just edited it, like so. So we've got rid of all those unnecessary columns. You can see the dates are in the column that I want it in. Everything's looking exactly how I want it. And now I can analyze that data, ready to pull out some information. Now, a really great way that we can analyze data in Excel is by using a pivot table. So a pivot table will quickly summarize large amounts of data. And in this case, you can see I do have quite a lot of data here. And again, I want to analyze this. Now, as I showed you before, I wanted to know how many people had completed different modules. And I could sit here again and start typing out all those calculations, or I could use a pivot table to get Excel to do all of that for me. So let's analyze this information here. So to do that, I'm just going to go to Insert. I'm going to go to Tables, and there's an option here called Pivot Table. And I'm just going to select this. It will now ask me, do I want the pivot tables to appear on the existing worksheet? So it'll appear on this screen with the data. Just because I want you to actually see what's going on, I don't want too much on my screen at once. I'm just going to do a new worksheet. So we'll have a new sheet at the bottom, a blank canvas to do this on. And I'm just going to press OK. And there we are. Here's my pivot table. Now, all my data is in here. It's just I haven't specified anything. So it's actually blank. There's nothing there at the moment because we need to build that pivot table. So if I just click onto my pivot table, we got this option that appears here. I'm just going to open this up a bit more so again, we can all see. And I'm now going to build a table. So how do I want this to look? Well, firstly, I want the title of my modules to appear in rows. So I'll just click title and drag it into the rows box. And you can see it then immediately puts all of my modules into rows for me. I now want to select date, which is the next option down. So as you can see date here, and I want those to appear in columns. So I want them to run across the screen and we'll choose date. And if I just shrink that a bit, you can see we now have our modules running down in rows and our dates running across in columns. We can now get the pivot table to tell us how many times people have completed the modules on different days. So to do this, I want to select badge ID, and I'm going to put that in values. Now, there is a problem that happens straight away, and that's just because I've got the wrong formula working. It's basically just showed me the badge IDs. And then what it's done is it's added up the actual number of badge ID. And that is a completely useless figure to me. I don't need to know what the total of the badge ID itself is. I want to know how many times each of these has been completed. So let's just specify the formula. So again, in that values option where I've got badge ID, I'm just going to click the drop down. And there's an option that says value field settings. And in here, you can choose the calculation you want. And I want it to do that classic count. I want it to count how many times that badge ID has appeared on those different days next to those modules. So we're going to do count. We'll press OK. And now it should have returned a much better idea of what's happened. So on the 1st of March, 2022, one person completed that module. On the 2nd, 2 people completed it. On the 4th, 3 people did. There are days where certain people didn't complete these modules. If I scroll down to the bottom, it gives me a grand total of how many modules were completed on each day. And if I go to the end, it shows me how many times each module has been completed in that time period. And just by looking at this, I can analyze it. I can see that 132 people completed modules on this day. Well, why did so many people complete modules on that day when only 6 did modules on that day? And I can start pulling trends out in there by analyzing that data. Again, a lot of people completing these modules here, but not so many completing this module. So I can go across and say, well, why is no one completing the Google Classrooms, but so many people are completing the Microsoft Office? And again, it lets us see how much traffic is going to certain areas. I've been able to analyze that very quickly by building a pivot table. And it's done all those calculations for me. Now, finally, I can put this into a chart again if I just want to showcase this to somebody. So I can just, again, exactly the same as before, go to insert. We want to add a chart in, but this time I'm going to add a pivot chart. Let's just go with the first recommendation. Now this looks very messy, but again, I can filter this down. So I just want to know how many people completed those Microsoft Office ones. So let's just select those. Let's just do this Microsoft Office. So I've selected them. And let's just select for the first week of March. So I'm just going to get rid of those and just click on the first week of March. And now I can see it actually looks like quite a lot of people were completing these modules on the 4th of March. So obviously something happened on that day and not so many people were completing these modules on the 6th, it looks like. So again, I've just been able to analyze, pull out some of that information into a pivot chart just to demonstrate it. Now, again, very conscious of time, I only got 2 minutes left. There is a lot in this session and I appreciate it's a lot to remember, and I certainly could not remember all of this myself, but it's to showcase to you that there are tools available in Excel, like pivot tables, pivot charts, Power Queries, that a lot of people don't know about, that you can use that will do a lot of the work for you and save you a substantial amount of time. And that's what this session was there today, to show you you can use those tools to incorporate into day-to-day activities to save you that time. Now, do check out Digital Wings, as I said, loads of information on there which should support you with Excel, especially the basics that we have on there, and the introductions to things like formulas. So again, you just need to sign up to Digital Wings to go onto that. Use that code, as I said, SDRT, which will give you a tailored pathway. But again, that is everything from me. I will just, what I was going to say is, Ben, is there anything that you would like to add before we close off today?
No, just say a massive well done. You guys have been awesome, and hopefully that hasn't kind of like given you lots of things to kind of think, well, crikey, how do I do that? Don't forget all of those sort of those formulas. As you start typing it in, it gives you sort of like there's little step-by-step parts of the elements of the formula that it then needs, and there's like little hyperlinks you can click on, and it'll give you some guidance on those next steps for you.
Absolutely. But that's all from me. So